So obviously all eyes are on the Superman box office. We talked about it pretty extensively yesterday, fairly extensively. And here we have Superman soaring to 22 million plus in previews, best year to date and record for James Gunn, higher than Barbie. Well, it is higher than Barbie. Obviously, superhero movie previews are typically massive compared to other type of normal previews, but that is slightly higher than Barbie. It's about $1 million higher than The Batman as well when you look at these previews. Now, keep in mind, both The Batman and Superman had Tuesday previews before they had Thursday previews, the early screening, stuff like that. I think The Batman made $4 million on Tuesday. Superman made $2.8 million on Tuesday. Thursday, Superman is higher than The Batman. I saw a lot of people talking about, I even saw this as well, people being like, wow, that's way higher than Man of Steel. That is correct. That preview is way higher than Man of Steel. Something to keep in mind when it comes to comparing preview numbers for things that released 10 plus years ago. If you remember this, Jay, previews used to be a very different thing. We used to have Friday midnight openings.
Yes.
And then about 12, 13 years ago, they started to do 10 p.m. previews on Thursday and then 9 p.m. previews on Thursday. I think Man of Steel, it was 10 p.m. previews. Now you're up to fucking 2 p.m. previews.
Yeah,
with a lot
that's
of
when I
stuff.
went.
So,
I saw 2 o'clock.
yeah, so the Thursday opening days, obviously, or the Thursday previews are obviously hugely expanded from things that came out a while ago. But that is a solid number, and it's a number that they need to have. We talked about this. I said that I thought those projections, the $100 million, I thought those were super low. I thought it would come in around 130-ish. And if it's tracking similar to the Batman, that probably does mean that'll end up where it is. There could be more walk-up business for this than the Batman. I don't think the Batman is a super like kid-friendly movie, whereas I think Superman will be.
Yes.
But internationally, there's still some problems. A couple places in Europe, it's actually second to Jurassic World, even with its opening, and it's projected to get less in opening weekend. Europe and Asia, very soft box office. Latin America, doing very well. But, I mean, good news for James Gunn's Superman, $22 million in previews. They need this to be huge, despite what they're saying.
Yes.
You saw this article the other day from Wall Street Journal?
Here's the goal, 500 million globally. Boy, they put that low, didn't they?
That is so fucking wild. Warner Brothers' goal was to gross over 500 million globally. Just want to put this in perspective. If it makes $500 million, it is a catastrophic, monumental fucking failure that will lose a fuck ton of money for them. This is the same, again, this is the same type of energy as Marvel saying Captain America Brave New World only cost $180 million and the break even is $425 million. Nobody believes that. No one should believe that. They spent well over $300 million on that movie. Superman spent well over $300 million on their movie. And they also spent $200 million marketing the movie.
Yeah.
So if your break even is at a minimum somewhere above 800 million, stop it with these fucking talking points, bro. I'm sure people will repeat it because people are dumb. But if it makes 500 million, that is a massive disaster.
You know what? Is that going to be the new norm? It's like, they're just going to have the directors come out and be like, well, the goal is to make 300 million. So if we do that, then we're winning. I also love the fact that when people try to do movie numbers, like budget numbers, they oftentimes forget to add that the theater's got to get paid too. So just because it made like a few million, like whatever million, like people forget that some of that money goes to the movie theater. And like the percentage changes every weekend, I believe, for as long as it's in the theater. I was reading, like, correct me if I'm wrong. I was reading like the movie gets the most the opening weekend, and then it slowly tapers down as the theater collects more money for each weekend that it's out there.
Yes, so, typically opening weekend, the studios will get the biggest portion, percentage of the cuts, and then as it's released, as it's winding down, they get less and less.
Right.
But also it's going to be different depending on country, right? Here in the United States, the average over the totality of the lifespan of the movie, the studios depending on the studio, can keep between 55 to 60%, right? Depending on what deal they work out and how front loaded it is, stuff like that. Internationally, it's closer to 40, 43% that the studio gets to keep. In China, studios only see about 25% of money for movies that are released in Chinese theaters. So overall, right, everything's going to depend on when it made the money, how it made the money, where it made the money, all this shit. General rule of thumb is the studios get to keep around half, right, based on these worldwide releases, around half of the money that they make at the box office.
Right.
Certainly that can be different if you have a movie that does $300-400 million in China. You probably need to tweak the way that you're looking about that because they get to keep so little of it. But in general, that's the case. So when you claim you spend $225 million, they spent more than that, but let's take them at their word. And then they also admit, Hollywood Reporter had that came out earlier, a $200 million marketing budget for the movie. And you have $425 million sunk into this thing before you're making a dime back. This is a catastrophe. This is them trying to set the stage. This is them lowering expectations. This is James Gunn going out there and saying, it doesn't need to make $700 million. That's ridiculous. It needs to be big. And, it can be. There's a lot of people out there that like the movie, even though I'm not a super big fan of it. But it needs to do much better than that for it to actually be a success.
It needs rewatchability, man. People they're going to need people to go back and watch it a few times for it to work. But I guess we'll see.
But this, 22 million, just slightly above the Batman. That is good news for them. We're going to have to see how it tracks over this weekend. And my prediction was 130 million-ish domestic debut. One of the problems is those international numbers, though. If this makes 130, 135 million domestically and only $100 million internationally, that can be a problem. Like that can be a problem for them. Because right now we're all focused on domestic, and rightly so, because we're America, so fuck everybody else. Yeah. But the truth is the international numbers are often what make these superhero movies the massive hits that they are. And if it stays around that $100 million international one, still a lot of reason to worry.